So for those who may not know me, my name is Nicolas Fiumarelli. I consider myself a superhero because I am engineer in computer science with a master's degree in the Internet of Things and also in Internet governance. So more than 15 years of experience in the Internet governance field, and my career has been deeply intertwined with the technological and policy aspects of the Internet security, particularly in the fields of the IP addressing and infrastructure, because one of my key roles I held was at LACNIC, where I am here right now at the office, the Latin American and Caribbean Internet Address Registry, located in Montevideo in Uruguay, in my country, in South America. At La Casa de Internet, or the House of Internet, we say, where several organizations like ICANN and diverse ecosystem and technical community works here. Specifically at LACNIC, my work focused on ensuring the security and stability of the Internet infrastructure, specifically through the implementation of, for example, one technology that is resolved public key infrastructure, that is the RPKI. RPKI is a critical framework designed to prevent IP address hijacking, ensuring that the Internet traffic is routed securely. That is an important part of the Internet. But additionally, I am also involved in maintaining this registry or the complex systems that underpin the Internet infrastructure, particular IP addressing, DNS reverse mapping, essential services provided by LACNIC as part of its responsibility as a regional Internet registry. Also, experiences that has given me a deep understanding of the technical challenges and security risks associated with managing the Internet's core infrastructure. So working on RPKI and other complex systems there at LACNIC. But beyond LACNIC, I have also been actively involved in the Internet Society, particularly through the Internet Society alumni network that I recommend so much. When you get a fellowship from Internet Society and finish appropriately, you become an alumni that is a person that is part of the technical community of Internet Society. So this network, we know, is a community of professionals committed to ensuring that the Internet remains open, globally connected, and secure. Moreover, my work with the Internet Governance Forum at the Uruguay, where I am a product coordinator, among other roles that I have, for example, on the involvement with the mutually agreed norms for routing security, the MANNERS, the steering committee, is a global effort, MANNERS, to improve security and resilience of the Internet routing, mentioning about it so much. But then in my career, I experienced several years of working intersections between technology, security, policy, also first how crucial encryption is to maintain trust in our digital world. So in 2024, we face a rapidly evolving landscape of threats and challenges. And that's why today I will talk about some scenarios, use cases, and different threats, and how to solve those from the different perspectives. For each of the topic we will address, I will consider the user's part, company's part, and then the regulation or the regulators part that is also crucial. So with different technologies, we will delve today. So that is the agenda for today. The idea is to delve on the current landscape on online security. As I said, we are facing a multitude of global challenges today that are constantly evolving. So these threats are considered more sophisticated right now with the use of AI. There are more advanced techniques targeting not just like individuals like in the past, but also critical infrastructure, organizations, even entire nations, as we see in several governmental cases being hacked. So you will hear today a lot about encryption. That is an alert for you because I am a technical person and I would like to deeply a little and hope you can follow. I will try to explain more on the ground. But first, let's focus on some popular top threats for global security that are impacting today. First of all, to introduce online safety, this focused on safeguarding this personal information from, well, I will note here that every time you see at the slide green label is for the good practice. It's like the action the person, the individual, or the organization need to do. When you see a note in blue, It's about best practice. I mean, it's the concept of the security method to become more secure. And when you see a red label, that is a threat. So important to note the red labels as well. So this online safety concept is very enormous. Today we will focus just on a part that is more on the first one, but then we will touch some of the others. Different attacks like unauthorized access or misuse access. You can prevent through encryption, secure storage. These concepts are the ones that we are dealing today. But online safety has also this part of educating users, especially children, that are more vulnerable to online threats like phishing and malware. And the idea is to equip them with knowledge and common sense throughout this talk as well. And also to secure communications, that is the other part, because it's not on the isolated and also on the risk you could have, but also with the interchange of machines. We're talking about the internet, secure online communications, or how to protect digital identities. There are several multitude of solutions there to prevent this. So the first threat is phishing. How phishing works? You can see at the images there some examples of real cases like Netflix fake email from a different URL. You cannot hear that the URL is misspelled here, but you can know that it's like that info at the end. These are several things you can know to prevent being phished. Phishing is usually when you have attacker has a similar page to the official one, and you put your credentials there, or you press on some links there that are not intended. The idea is that basically the attacker phishes your information, your credentials, or your bank account, for example, your credit card. Sometimes you receive an email that you have been lucky, you receive $1,000. So log in into your bank account here and put your credentials so we can send you the money. So let's take a look at the scenarios and the possible solutions. For the users, we need to verify the URL carefully, as I mentioned. There is a lot of attacks called the homograph attacks and typo-squatting attacks that consist in modifying the URL or registering a domain name that is very similar to the one that is official. Sometimes changing, for example, if you combine an R and an N, you can form similar to an M. Sometimes that confused, but also there are Cyrillic characters, and with the use of universal acceptance that we are all promoting for these universal characters in the domain names and email address internationalization, comes with a problem that is you can register these typo-squatting or similar names, and the users sometimes get confused thinking that this is a legitimate URL when they are putting the user and password, and it's not, right? So what is the recommendation here? To verify the URL carefully. Also, every time you see suspicious characters there, try to retype these characters directly in the URL bar, so you are sure that you are not threatened of these different characters with points at the top or with a slightly comma there. So that is some of the way. The other way to prevent phishing is to check for the green candle padlock that is often used in browsers. Also, if the URL starts with the HTTPS, that assures you that it has the transport layer security file. So this indicates a secure connection, basically. And then every time you want to click on a link that is on your email, on your inbox, try to hover over the link, to put the click hovering over the link. Sometimes at the corner bottom left, you will see where is the URL that you will be directed when pressing that link. That is a very good practice to preview this full URL and have another way of sensing where you will be directed to. So the idea is to ensure it matches the intended destination, because sometimes attackers use these suspicious links, as I mentioned to you, or sometimes they use these shortened links to allow you to go to an external website that will be not legitimate. Obviously, do not enter sensitive information in every form you found around the internet, credit card, important passwords, websites that could ask you for this information. Be sure to not enter that information. Be sure to contact the organization directly if you have some doubts about this information being asked. Be cautious also with email attachments. I imagine that everyone nowadays know what these email attachments and links are, like with the risky extensions, like if you use Microsoft .x, .zip, these different extensions of files are suspicious because something is inside the zip, you don't know. Also with the Office documents in the past, now if you have updated all Microsoft or Office suites, you will be secure, but in the past or if the software is not updated, you will have some issues with malware that attack via macros. That is a feature of spreadsheet, basically, but you can use for bad things. And every time you see an XLS or an XLSM file, be careful on executing it, on opening, because it will execute macros that will expose your sensitive information. So always verify the sender's email address, as I mentioned, not only URLs, but also the sender address. And also check directly with your bank account if you see any suspicious communication, because they might have policies on how to prevent or alert all users about these practices. So in the case of companies, they need to implement this comprehensive email security solution. They have anti-spam, some filterings, and also regular employee training. That is very important for all the blue collar and the different employees of your company that could access a service or a network of the company. You need to regulate and do this training for them. So awareness campaigns to educate on the things I have mentioned to you. And also because these current phishing threats and tactics are very common and are at the top of the popular ones nowadays. So, and for regulations, there are a lot of things happening on that field to adopt this phishing detection and logging and different for that are more required right now for big companies, but also for small and medium enterprises. They need to be the norm. They have ways to report incidents or to log all things that happen. Another one that is very common nowadays is the social engineering. This encompasses a lot of different vector attacks. Usually, this is psychological. You receive an email. Very common is the email from the CEO asking you to do a transaction for a new bank account or a new thing. A lot of workers have fallen into this attack, the CEO attack. Social engineering also plays a role when you are in an airport, at an airport or at a bank where you have public Wi-Fi networks. Be sure that these networks are with password. And also, if they are public or the password is really common, you need to be aware of the HTTPS because there is a common attack that is stored in the SSID. Basically, you share your internet with your mobile phone, putting the same name as the network of the airport. So people automatically join the network, and then you can be playing a role as a man-in-the-middle attack. That is a consequent attack of this. So public Wi-Fi networks, be aware of accessing your sensitive accounts, like putting your password in the public Wi-Fi. You can be assured if you use the HTTPS, but could be a man-in-the-middle tampering the access point of the airport. Be aware of using always a VPN if you have. There are publicly available there to protect your data with an additional layer before going to the internet. So never write down or leave user credentials on paper. This is very common at workplace where people left papers with the passwords inside the box. Everyone, this will be really accessible. So using password managers is my suggestion. Also that you lock your computer when you are away of your workstation, and activating the multi-factor authentication that we will talk a little later about it. If this is available, you will need to use it because nowadays it's crucial to use password managers and multi-factor authentication. Also, be aware of these social engineering tactics, phone calls asking you about your pet's name or your child's name, because everyone uses pet and child plus some numbers, plus some symbols in your password. So avoid doing that because they could impersonate you. And this is the most powerful impact they will have, that is impersonating these services or company executives or revealing your sensitive information, transferring funds that are unexpected. Then for companies, how to prevent from these threats, they need to implement these strict policies on employees to lock their computers. There are some norms for that. Also to continuously educate them, but also, please don't leave your credentials on sensitive information in a TXT file, then in your computer or in a piece of paper. Don't do that. So also for the companies to do these social engineering awareness campaigns, talking about phishing, ransomware, and different attacks, then securing the network, because the network can have file systems exposed, can have user credentials that are by default, but everyone is using cloud and Amazon and virtual machines, but sometimes they have the default password. So you need to do some security configurations before starting to put a service in production. So all these matters, avoiding or monitoring the Wi-Fi networks are very good for companies. On the regulation side, there are robust security measures, most of the ones I mentioned in the company's field, but then there are some policies now talking about how to act in case of unauthorized access, and you need to have a methodology in your company sometimes to mitigate the risk, and once the risk is accepted, you need to mitigate the impact. So going to the next one, here we have the broken access control that is one of the top 10 in the OWASP. The OWASP is an Open Web Application Security Project. It's a non-profit organization that is always collecting information about latest threats, late attacks that people are suffering. And this broken access control is a very common one. Basically, the problem is with the programmers that they do not put sufficient role or authorization mechanisms. So you can do things like this in the image. By modifying an ID in the URL, you are very aware that when you are using services in internet by browser, you use URLs. So these URLs allow you to modify directly in the URL bar the ID. And sometimes this mechanism is not controlled on the server side. For example, one common thing that for the last 10 years I have seen a lot is when you receive an email from your transportation company, for example, they have a link there that you need to click the link to access the full message, to see the message in the context of the service or in the website of the company. So usually these websites with these endpoints has this kind of ID thing. And if you modify the ID on the URL bar, you will be seeing an email that is intended for another user that is nothing in your control. So these things happen and are very common nowadays. I repeat it, this is one of the most popular ones. A lot of applications from popular platforms have these problems in the past and they solved. But yes, it's a current issue that is exploiting nowadays. What are the solutions? So if you notice the URLs containing from the user point of view, because we cannot say so much from the user point of view because it's a problem of the companies, actually, of the programmers doing these softwares or websites. So, but if you as a user notice these URLs containing visible IDs or incremental patterns that allow you to access other users' data, please report this to the service immediately. That could be the good practices. Also, when sharing documents or files, everyone uses Google Drive or Soho Drive or different platforms managing files. You always need to check the permissions, ensuring that not everyone is accessible to this link, whether the link is secure or has a long key, because only the intended recipients need to have access. You can always check that. And in case of a sensitive file being shared publicly, or you check the configuration, it's not your file, it's a file of your boss, for example, please, if you see that this is shared among other people that is outside, report to a responsible organization or report directly to your boss, because this indicates a potential broken access control vulnerability. Then for companies, it's the same. They need to do these controls in the server side, enforcing authorization checks, that the users has the privileges to see the specific ID, to regularly review and test access control mechanisms, different things that companies can do to prevent these unauthorized access attempts. For regulator, there are several data breaches that have fallen because of this attack of broken access control. So they are starting to enforce more stricter access control requirements, especially for this sector like finance and healthcare. that we have seen that is very complicated when you are dealing with this sensitive information. So also periodical audits or mandates for small and medium-sized companies is required. That's from some later regulations. It's important to ensure that these roles and permissions and the endpoint security for each of the pages. Let me check the time. Okay. Just the latest ones. Session hijacking, this is a common one because once you are logged in a website, then you don't need to log in every time you are logged in. You are accessing the platform, the website or a service, and you navigate through the website because you are logged in. But how the browser or the service at the endpoint knows that you are legitimate is because something that is called cookies, like these cookies in the image there, where the person is impersonating the real user and trying to get these cookies to access the website. So here, there are not so much to do, but on the user side, you need to be mindful of session timeouts. Usually, websites ask you to extend your session sometimes, or you have an idea of what is the timeout of your session. Be aware of that. And also, not only in website, but when using personal API keys or the GitHub tokens, everyone that uses GitHub to manage code now is enforced to have a multiple factor authentication that is a token sometimes. But these tokens sometimes has no expiration. Or if you have Google services like Google Maps and you consult in a massive way because you have a transportation application that uses Google Map information, please make sure that you not expose your personal API key, or if you created those API keys, you don't hide those in a TXT file. Use a password manager instead. Then avoid leaving the sessions open. This is very common. Usually people use Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc., and they leave the sessions open. They have some information on your mobile phone, or if you are using the computer, this is made by these cookies that prevent you from logging in every time. But if you leave open Facebook and you have a malware installed in your computer, you can start to impersonate via your own computer, trying to access via this cookie all the information. So multi-factor authentication is another one in the case of critical operations in websites. Sometimes when you are using your bank service, nowadays it's a good practice is that at the end, when you are finishing and confirming a transaction, they ask you again to enter the multi-factor authentication code or to enter again a different token or to authenticate again. This practice is very good because these critical operations, if you are logged in and have your session there, could be tampered and an attacker could take this session and basically use your session as it was you. For companies, the best is to do that, what I just said. For critical operations, enable multi-factor authentication as mandatory. So every time you will, for example, at LACNIC, at the Internet Registry, the Internet Service Providers are doing delegations of these IP addresses for other companies, for example, or they are creating rules for routing. In this case, when you are confirming the operation, you will need to gain the multi-factor authentication because if not, someone with your session open will be tampering and doing things. So this last mile multi-factor is crucial for preventing session hijacking, but also there are practices on the company side. For example, having very low expiration times for sessions, also preventing having multiple sessions at the same time because you can trick by accessing different tabs in your browser. These kind of attacks are a little sophisticated, but believe me that this is very common to see. And there are other like the HTTP headers that you can use, HTTP only, so that prevents to inject the session in a browser that are in another part of the world, but with your own session. Different techniques that companies need to do to prevent this. And then for regulators, there are some new work in 2023 that we have heard in the IGF, the Internet Governance Forum last year, about the stricter requirements to actually use and enforce multiple factor authentication in these critical operations, especially again in finance and healthcare. So here about the password leaks, a lot of news this year and last year about companies being leaked in terms of password of users being exposed publicly. This is very, very common, and a top 10 right now is that there were some multiple collection of passwords leaked through the time. And nowadays there is a database there, basically that is totally public, that is 1.4 billion passwords leaked. You can see there some screenshots or parts of this MD5 or different ways of storing password, rainbow, or also with the counterpart that is plain. If your password is there, it's a complicated thing. There was a very common one that was the Facebook leak. It was not specifically passwords, but Facebook leak involves a mobile phone. So if you have basically the name of a person and the surname, and it is correct on the Facebook, and at some time this person associated the mobile phone with the Facebook. So in the 2019 Facebook leak, you will find easily the mobile phone of this person simply by the name. I am very funny about this because sometimes my friends ask me for names and I check in the list and I say, okay, this is the mobile phone number. Contact this person. So yes, for password leaks, what are the good practices for the users? Throughout the years, we say that strong, unique passwords are important to prevent using these leaked passwords on multiple platforms. You cannot use the same password on the different platforms because if one platform is leaked, then they will automatically try to log in Gmail, to log in Microsoft, to log in a different platform with the same password. And if you use the same one, please don't do that. Go now and change all your passwords. But my good recommendation is not to focus on this unique password that you remember with combination. Use a password manager that suggests you specifically 200 long passwords that you will be very secure. And this password manager generate and store this password for you, so you don't need to do that. And my personal recommendation is 1Password. It's not a marketing here, but it is a very good solution. I have read the documents there. There is a lot of documentation and it works very good. But also I recommend to do it yourself. Once you will know how encryption works, that we will learn right now in that, you can do it by yourself. So several things here. There is a page called Have I Been Pwned when you access your email address or username, and this site is very secure. They have a long explanation of the security, and you can know if your credentials have been compromised and go directly and change them. For companies, a lot of important things we already mentioned, and on the regulators part is already. Okay, I will try to go very fast here because this is the most nasty part of the talk, and then I will have the last 10 minutes for having some questions and answers you could have. So let me then dive into this part. Here is encryption, the main topic of today. Sorry for all this long talk, but these are tips that are very good for having a toolkit about it. I thought that those tips will serve you so much to address common daily scenarios and ways to prevent them with the good practices. But now let's focus more on a more mathematical or technical aspect that is encryption, so you will understand a little more about this and why this magic or how these algorithms works. So I will try to be the most non-technical as possible, but sorry because I am very technical here. So encryption, how it works. You will see a lot of conversation about the high level of encryption, like how it works, like in general, but sometimes you end these talks without knowing anything about encryption. They talk very general sometimes, and you don't understand how it works actually. So here I will try to explain for you. So here is a common example of encryption. Encryption is to have a secure format to protect basically from unauthorized access. So you protect your passwords, but you also protect your keys, API keys, different keys that protocols exchange within the internet. So the basic thing is to encrypt. You have a plain text that is hello, for example, and then when you apply the encryption, you have the ciphertext that is the encrypted or the encoded message. That is something that needs to be very complicated to reverse to the original one. So that is the make sense, to transform the information to a secure format. Then to ensure privacy and protection, because this data is at rest, like in a database or in your mobile phone, Sometimes the data is in transit. So we need to prevent to be exposed. Like if you are putting your credit card, if this information travel in plane, like the credit card and the wire, someone can just listen to the Wi-Fi and exchange your credit card. So you need to send text like this one, like the ciphertext, right? So this is called end-to-end encryption. Sometimes via WhatsApp, you use a different communication platform. It says this communication is end-to-end encrypted, and here you have the key, the public key, etc. So important for you to know. And crucial for securing data in the cloud. We already mentioned about data at rest that could be on the cloud. You will have sensitive information, your photos, your documents, your contracts are all in the cloud. So be careful because this information is not stored in plain. It's stored in this way, in the ciphertext, to not expose or misuse. So then you have, for example, all browsers by default are enforcing that you use HTTPS. That is at least one key that you will exchange that prevents you from attackers to, without knowing this key, they cannot decode, decrypt the message in the wire. So HTTPS, all browsers nowadays, the most popular ones are, if you have them up to date, you will have the security measure. And then for other things, like I mentioned before, like for routing security or domain security, fundamental parts of the core of the internet infrastructure that also use these keys to have this authorization or authorities or to prevent someone saying, okay, I am YouTube, so go me. I use YouTube because there was a very common popular case that is YouTube Pakistan Telecom 2008. When Pakistan Telecom announced by a fail or announced by a mistake, they say that they were YouTube, the IP addresses of YouTube. So all the traffic to YouTube go to Pakistan Telecom. It produces a denial of service attack and everyone couldn't access YouTube. It was a big problem, but you can prevent that if you validate the routing. These are some of the things. So I will go very rapidly through the basics of encryption, like from hundreds of years ago to the latest ones, to the quantum resistant algorithms. So welcome to this trip. And okay, we will start with the Cesar cipher. This very beautiful device that you see there is a manual device when you have two circles there with all the letters of the alphabet. And basically you have a substitution where each letter in the plain text is shifted a certain number of places. Like for example, if I use 2 as the index of shifting, I have an example here of the plaintext attacked down, and then the A became a C, the T became a B. It's like adding 2 to have the next letter. So at the end, you have this message that is C, B, B, C, is something not legible. But what happened here? A computer can break this algorithm? Yes, very easily, because the complexity that is a concept in computation, in informatics, the complexity is how complex is to break an algorithm in terms of some parameters. You could have the length of the key or the length of the password. These are factors. In this case, you have 25 letters in the alphabet, so you can do 25 different shifts. It's just testing each of the 25 shifts and see if you recover a correct word. So this attack is very easy to brute force for a simple 1990 machine. And also you can do it with this tiny device, like it's helping you to calculate each letter faster. The second one is the visionary cipher. It's not longly used, obviously. It's an improvement of the Cesar cipher by using a repeating keyword. Here is the example. You want to encrypt the text hello, again, but you use a keyword that is lemon. So you put the keyword down of the plain text here and calculate adding the index of the letter in the keyword. So in the case of the letter H, you are shifted by 11 positions because the L is in the 11th position. So having this shift generates that the H becomes an S. So the complexity of the attack, how to break this, well, you will have a lot of different words to put there. So depending on the length of the keyword, you will have n to the power, raised to the power of 26. That are all the shifts that you could do in the alphabet. So this is like polynomics. For the ones that remember about mathematics, the polynomics are like things that are potential things, like n raised to the power of something number that is constant, in this case, the alphabet. So this is very easy for a 9090 computer as well, maybe some minutes for the Windows 95, but then for nowadays computer is milliseconds breaking. So if you receive or an attacker, a man in the middle, can capture a data packet there, a datagram in the network saying this ciphertext, it costs like only n raised to the power of 26 to break and get the original message and get the keyword to decrypt all these messages. The next one is RSA. It's a little more complex because it's based on a problem that is of factoring large numbers. And here is the very funny thing that in your school and your high school, when you were a child, you learn about prime numbers. Prime numbers. Look, they are very important, the prime numbers here, because basically RSA Rives-Shamir-Adleman algorithm bases on the multiplication of two big prime numbers. This is very good because it provides a complexity of 2 raised to the power of n, that is like an exponential complexity order. Is better, is totally complicated for classical computers. And here you have an example of Alice sending an encrypted message to Bob using the RSA. Here is some more explanation of the algorithm. But basically, Bob needs to select 2 prime numbers that are very large, 2056 bit long, and they multiply and have a long number there. And the problem is to solve which are these prime numbers as a base that are multiplied. We only the message there. And the key here is the multiplier number. The thing in red is the thing you want to protect. You also need to select a public key, and then it's very easy because Alice needs to do an operation that is called the message she would like to send, raised to the power of this public key you selected, mod, that is an operation that is like the rest or the remainder of the division, mod this big multiplication of 2 prime numbers. So this message C is secure and you can send it through the wire, and then Bob use a reverse method that recover the original message. So this computation, as I said, is 2 raised to the power of n, is exponential, so it's very good. But what happened with the quantum computers that we'll talk in some minutes, this reduced the complexity to a polynomial complexity is very bad. They reduced to at least n to the power of 3. So it's like breakable in minutes of hours for these classical computers that uses AI, for example, or a lot of in a field when you have all video accelerator cards connected one each other, like distributed computing, is very breakable in minutes or hours, actually. So this is a really problem, and that is why RSA is already deprecated. So now the next one is the advanced encryption standard. This one is being used nowadays in all the services you could imagine, from routing to secure TLS to Signal to WhatsApp. This is a symmetric encryption algorithm. The complexity is the same as RSA, raised to the power of n. But the difference is that even using Grover's algorithm and Shor's algorithm, that are things that quantum computers, that I will explain a little later how it works, break the encryption using techniques that basically do calculations in parallel. So this algorithm could be reduced to 2 raised to the power of n divided by 2. It's still resistant to these quantum computers, but I put that in yellow there because this is a technology that is evolving right now super fast, and with a quantum computer with sufficient qubits and new mathematical techniques that the mathematicians could found, maybe AES is break. So here is an example that obviously every time we go into the future, the algorithms are more complicated to perform. And in this key, they need to agree on a 256-bit key, like the one in red here. You have the message, hello. So via some rounds of processing that involves S-box substitution, shifting rows, like with the ciphertext, it's like having a matrix there, and then you become having the ciphertext like this. So you can send this in the wire securely, and then both that knows the same key as Alice that need to interchange it at first with other algorithms. At the end, both decrypt the message and come back with a hello. So that is sufficient for the algorithms up to 20 years ago. But now we have some news. What happened last week? Last week, NIST released, the NIST is the National Institute for Standard Technologies in the United States. They released its first set of finalized standards for post-quantum cryptography. These are very important standards nowadays that have different names. We will see crystal dilithium and crystal kyber. These new algorithms are designed to protect against the future threats posed by these quantum computers. So we have already talked about that quantum computers have the potential to break vision, to break RSAs, and potentially break AES. So encryption methods like this are under risk. And then quantum computers was fully developed because we already have some real examples. Sycamore, I will talk a little about it later. They could render these current cryptographic techniques to be obsolete. So this is an urgency, and it was already said by the spokesperson at NIST. They say there is no need to wait for future standards. Go ahead and start using these three. We need to be preparing in case of an attack that defeats the algorithm in these three standards. So there is a common concept here that is that attackers who harvest now and decrypt later. They can be harvesting now all the information, and then when the quantum computers become so powerful and publicly available, they, with the ciphertext we have seen, they collect the ciphertext, and later, when the technology allows, they could decrypt. And maybe if 5 years happen, you will still have the same password for your bank account. Think about if you change in the last 5 years your bank account. That is a really nasty thing. So if an attacker collects encrypted data today, they could decrypt in the future with quantum computers. So what happened here? We need new algorithms that are quantum resistant. The ones that need development are here and are based on a different problem to solve. That is lattice problems. It's like if you remember from algebra at the school or high school or at university, actually, you have these linear combinations. We have some base vectors, and with linear combinations of the vectors, we generate the plane, the space, and also multidimensional. So lattice is based on 200 dimensions of having linear combination, plus adding something that is like an error or noise. So you complicate all the things. So they end in a linear combination, and the algorithm to decrypt need to find these base vectors and also need to find what was the error or the noise to complicate the project even. So the complexity of these algorithms, in the same line that we were talking, is worse than AES that we saw, and is 2 raised to the power of n multiplied by logarithm of n. So it's very robust against classical and quantum attacks because there is no new algorithm that could reduce the complexity order with a quantum computer using this idea of multiparallelism. So only the Sphinx algorithm, that is one of the three that is proposed, is a little vulnerable because you can reduce to the half in exponential terms of the order. But these algorithms are very easy to work for encrypt. It's not so much necessary time you expend in encrypting, so we can start using this in WhatsApp and the different companies to store your own files and also at the Internet Infrastructure Core. So quantum computing is an emerging technology, also with AI and IoT and blockchain and other emerging technologies that we address every year at the Internet Governance Forum. And the quantum computer, here are some real examples. The idea of the quantum computer, I will not explain because it's a long topic here, but at least for you to know that classical computer works because they have a 0 or a 1 in the electronic, in the transistor, you have a 0 or a 1. And with the 0 and 1s, they operate and do the calculus and print the screen and everything. But the quantum computers use qubits that can exist in multiple states of matter simultaneously. This is called superposition. This allows the quantum computer to do some tricks, like, for example, the factorings in the prime numbers, that is very easy to perform, and you don't even need so much qubits to do it. So there were some milestones in 2023 and 2024 about Google Sycamore processor that break what is called the quantum supremacy. And then you have IBM single processor and different ones that are under developed this year. So this is all I would like to share with you today. Basically, I hope it's not so much information, but at least you learn something today. So many thanks again to the organizers. And yes, I wanted to create like a toolkit at the end or a summary for you last night when I was preparing the presentation, but I couldn't finish it. So it's under construction, but maybe in some days I could share in the group for you to have a summary of best practices are most to the ground of public users there and not only for technical. So thank you for the opportunity, Gosway, and attending to the messages.
Thank you so much. Wow, it was more technical than I thought. But I hope our audience got something out of it. And please, I think it's time for questions and answers. So please, if you have any question or any comments to add or any other thing you would like to voice out, kindly raise your hand and we'll allow you to speak. Or you can also drop it in the comment section. Okay, Diego, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So my question is this of these post-quantum algorithms are mathematically proved the same way that RSA doesn't actually have a proof for its security. Do these algorithms have a solid mathematical proof, or is it heuristical like with RSA? Thank you.
Yes, it's because these latest best algorithms and hash-based algorithms are some different techniques than the previous ones. Yes, there was a competition at the National Institute of Standard and Technologies that 5 years, if I am not wrong, this competition, when this crystal dilithium and crystal keeper in the first versions were proposed, but scientists, by mathematicals, so they perform a lot of test cases and trying to tamper these algorithms. And actually nowadays, they didn't find a way for the crystal dilithium one, for example, on how quantum computer could make profit of this parallelism to break the crystal dilithium. That is why it's very, with 5 years of testing proofs and use cases and mathematical proof, actually, they discovered that, at least for now, there are not current methods known with quantum computers to break. And you see that the classical complexity here is like enormous. It's like much powerful than previous AES algorithm. And now it's a standard at NIST. So NIST is proliferating, and for sure we will have, for example, at the IETF level, the Internet Engineering Task Force is the place where all companies create Internet standards and new protocols that obviously involve security and key exchange and public infrastructure methods. And you will see very soon that a lot of groups at the IETF will start to use to replace AES with the crystal dilithium. Also, we have seen in blockchain, there are blockchain platforms out there. Just to mention, blockchain is a technology that uses cryptography a lot, and they have a chain of crypto, and they are starting to use dilithium and key for digital signatures there. And they think that these technologies will last for at least 20 to 100 years in the future. So there is sufficient proof of these new algorithms.
Thank you.
Okay, Diego, I hope you're okay with that. So please, any other question, any other comments from anyone?
Hello, sir. Now, which software would you recommend for encrypting documents?
Can you- Well, basically, I will say to trust in Google, for example. If you want to trust, actually, Google has a very good way of privacy if you configure properly your documents. But if you want to store documents in your computer, I think you definitely need to encrypt them. You can find different suites like Jackson or different libraries you can use for do it yourself, or you can use your password manager. For example, 1Password or different password managers allows you to store files encrypted inside the password manager. So with this single password, you will have access to the rest of your passwords, but also to documents. And there are something that is called file vaults that are like vaults that you can share with your company collaborators as well, or have your personal file vaults that allows you to have your files just there, just inside the password manager. So these are totally protected. Obviously, this file is stored, kept in your computer or in the cloud, but is with ciphertext, right? So every time you want to save a document, please don't use compression or encryption that some PDF allows, because these technologies are using old algorithms. Start using these password managers for storing files, and also trusting the more popular platforms. I will say Google Drive, not so much actually, but then you have some, and you need to also read the terms and services, service agreements. Sometimes they mention the algorithms that they are using to encrypt your data. So that is a good research if you want to know a service is good. Try to ask, if you want to ask GPT to what is the algorithm used by this company, and if it's under the algorithms we have seen to be secure, then you can trust this service.
Just a follow-up question. Generally, it has been discovered that most of the Android phones are prone to viruses. Now, which antiviruses would you recommend for Android users?
So my recommendation there is, well, you know that Android is based on a sub-level like in Unix and these different platforms, that I will say that Microsoft Windows is most vulnerable, because you can actually execute, and the privileges there is not so much taken into account as, for example, using Mac or Linux. That's first. So Android has this extra layer that allow you to also check on the device features security. So it depends on you on having the application the rights to access your microphone, your files, etc. So every time you deal with a permission in Android, it's important when you accept. I recommend to only this time accept for these kind of things in applications. Then every updated version of Android has it. But I don't even recommend an antivirus or something for Android. It's be aware on all these practices to know, for example, in the case of the extension APK, that applications in Android that you can download for websites. And if you go to configuration, you allow third parties application to run on my Android. So there you are at risky. But sometimes there are third-party apps out there from legitimate websites that you can download. But please don't download APKs for Softonic or this kind of places that are known that they contain malware. So be careful on that. Be careful on installing games for kids, children. In the Android, it's very common. These games ask you to know about your contacts or ask you to make phone calls. I think that the layer of permissions that Android has is very good. You are just, as a user, controlling basically what the application does by setting OK or cancel on the permissions pop when they appear.
Okay, so thank you so much, Nicolas, for that highlight as well. Okay, so another question from Osman. Osman is asking what are some of the best practices or some of the approach that he could possibly manage his passwords.
Well, I have a guy, a colleague of mine that is from Japan, that they use 200 characters passwords for all his passwords. I think that is the best practice for passwords, actually, and always activate the multi-factor authentication if the apps allow you. Usually bank accounts, usually Google, another popular platform, has multi-factor authentication, not by default always, so you need to activate it. It's another layer of security, so don't depend only on your passwords. Don't put your passwords on a paper, don't put your passwords in files in your computer. That is the worst thing you can do. It's very difficult to effectively remember all the passwords. That is obviously because you also need to have a unique password for each platform, as I say, and you also say there. But using a password manager, you can have one only strong password that maybe is 150 characters that you remember, and then you will have all the rest of your password generated or suggested by the one password manager or the password manager you use. They usually has an interface where it suggests you when you are creating a new user in a platform or when you are resetting your password. They has a prompt there, and you could say, generate this password for me. I don't recommend using the password manager for the browsers. A lot of people uses like Google Chrome password manager. I don't recommend because you can be logged in every computer, and with a single very short password, you will access to the rest of your password. So use instead a software that is installed in your computer or in your device. You can install one password also in your mobile phone, and then you will have the rest of your passwords unique. And also, if you have a password that is the same as in other platform, this framework, this password manager recognizes these situations. So they ask you to change this password that are repeated as well. So that is a good way to not deal with reminding every password you need to use, and also having a centralized way that is also multi-factor authenticated, and you need to remember only one password. That is the practice.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, great one. So we are being tasked to always use multi-factor authentication and also password managers that are installed on our computer and not the ones from the browser directly.